Hello, I'm Gosha from the Cosmic Agency. Today's video is just purely mind-blowing. It is something that I have never come across. I don't think it really exists on Earth, and it just clearly points to them and to Swaruu having such an advanced mind technologically and scientifically. It is a fascinating article where you'll understand how matter is generated from the ether. I was always very curious about how it is that I can perceive this solid object as a solid object. It will be explained. It will be explained how it actually operates on the basis of consciousness, how it is the consciousness that generates the matter, but it will not be explained in a very fluffy ways, because we all know, we have come to understand that the consciousness is the basic for the reality, is the basis of the reality. But here it will be explained in a very scientific, detailed, esoteric way. It will be explained how the situations are the frequency itself, and how they can be inserted technologically by them, technologically, spiritually, because for them technology and metaphysics is just one and the same thing. They are just applying highly metaphysical concepts to the technology. They are using technology as an extension of their consciousness. It's quite mind-blowing, actually. So that will be explained, how they insert those situations, because situations being frequency, they can be inserted into the etheric quantic field and have it manifested, how they insert objects. Quite mind-blowing, and I'm going to leave you with it. Now, before I go to the video, just few comments that Swaruu shared herself before sharing this video. In the first point, she's explaining how difficult it was actually to write. When she shares these highly metaphysical advanced concepts, she finds it hard to express that. And she says, it is very difficult to write, because as these are not concepts that are there or understood there, it is very difficult to translate them or express them through mental ideas so it's understood. I have no way of expressing something that is not really understood there. I have only a limited number of words to work with. However, we are being prepared and trained for the 5D reality. This is what the preparation is about. It's about expanding our perception and trying to understand these concepts. She's also saying here, that article is about multiple intertwined things, like a cloth. Yes, because she's talking here about the mechanics of manifestation as a basic knowledge, initial knowledge with which to understand both stellar navigation, portals, how portals work, and the generation or manifestation of hard or physical matter from potential energy. And she continues to say, what you have now in your hands, this knowledge, not only that it doesn't exist on Earth, it is not understood there, or it's not known, but it is potentially dangerous. I just gave you a laser weapon with that, in a rhetorical sense. And she continues to say, I will tell you something else. Technically speaking, I believe that what I have just given you is violating the first prime directive of not being able to introduce technologies that exceed those already existing on a developing planet. Even so, she says, it's insufficient what I gave you to develop the mechanisms to do all that, really, to create that technology based with what she gave us. Many highly technical things are still missing, from materials to internal operation of holographic computers, without which the volume of data is impossible to process, even for the most advanced digital computers you have there. You also need to overcome the use of binary code to be able to calculate these things, and the use of mathematics in base 12 and not in base 10. that is also a limitation to implement that technology on Earth, because she will be here explaining in this article how these holographic computers can insert matter and can insert situations, and how can they travel through space and time. So without further ado, I'm leaving you with this most outstanding information. In the end of the video, there will be a short, very short summary of the most important points. Enjoy! In Stellar Navigation 1, I described how we navigate using a frequency map and not a locations map. In a frequency map, what is important is the relationship between the given specific frequencies that can be taken as destinations or as locations, and not concepts like distance and directional placement as would be in a traditional map. A frequency is a location, does not just represent it, as a dot and a name would represent a place on a traditional map. It is a location in itself. As everything is energy, the only difference between one location and another is its frequency. As we've described before, a frequency of a location is the result of the combination of all the energy interactions of not only the objects and things in such location, but also the relationship with other locations surrounding it, inside a continuous soup of potential energy in the form of waves. Each object, big or small, vibrates at a specific rhythm from a subatomic level, and that rate of vibration is what we call a density. Matter is always the result of consciousness and is a consequence of consciousness. The ultra-high vibration and ultra-high density potential energy field we call ether is nothing other than pure unified consciousness. The unified field from where everything else comes out from or is manifested from. Every holographic piece of the unified consciousness field, ether, has the same power as the whole and is the whole in itself. Each living form, each person's consciousness, is not only part of the ether, it is the ether in itself. Defining the term holographic piece as something that, although a fragment of a whole, it keeps all the attributes and the powers of the whole. Everything in the ether works and is in the form of energy fluctuations and variations within the field. Those are wave patterns. Every single wave is defined by a crest and trough moving and being at a specific time rate. This is called a frequency. And the frequency of a wave is defined by a time frame that is given by and as the result of the consciousness of the observer. When the frequency of a wave is given a specific time rate with added complexity in a mathematically perfect and orderly way by the observer consciousness, this is called the harmonics of a frequency. And this occurs as the result of a repetitive conscious intention by the observer, the thought pattern resulting from a creative imagination process. When the harmonics of a frequency has enough constancy energy and is of the right type, it will form standing waves. Those are points within an energy field where a concentrated part of that energy does not reabsorb back into the potential energy wave field again, as the harmonics of the frequency constantly feeds that specific point with energy given at a very specific rate, keeping it ever present and continuously energized. This will form a concentrated energy point within the field. This point is called a node, and with enough added complexity, it will form an object that we would call hard matter, and depending on the harmonics of the frequency, that matter will form an object. But its existence will always depend on the frequency and its harmonics that are given to it by the cause of them, the observer consciousness. Defining harmonics of a frequency as the ordered sequence of pulses within a potential energy field. Every frequency and harmonics of a frequency depend on a time rate. This time rate is the result of the changes in the intention and attention of the observer consciousness. Time being the result of the awareness of the observer consciousness as it animates its concepts and ideas, giving them a sequence, its own ideas, providing sense and logic to them. Time is a perception given by the order of concepts in the awareness of the consciousness observer and the rate with which it sequences its ideas. The more awareness, the more concepts it can manage, and at a higher rate, as it means processing more data perception. This perception will determine which density of existence the consciousness observer can perceive. This higher rate means a faster and more complex harmonics of a frequency the consciousness observer can create within a potential energy field. There are no densities of existence as such, not as separate realms. A density is the result of the capacity of perception of the consciousness observer, the rate with which it can process data, the rate it can give the harmonics of a frequency all matter depends on to exist in the awareness of the consciousness observer. It cannot perceive anything with a higher rate or frequency of an object resulting from a higher harmonic of a frequency than the rate of the consciousness observer can animate and understand its own perceptions. The more awareness, the more perceptions it can handle. The more perceptions it can process, the higher the rate of a harmonics of a frequency it can handle, resulting in the capacity to be aware of a higher density of existence, as low density of existence realms are the result of a slow harmonics of a frequency. And the faster it goes, it will result in a progressively higher density. And as explained above, the rate of speed is given by the consciousness observer. This means that there are as many densities of existence as consciousness observers are. And more than one consciousness observer can perceive the same as the result of similar harmonics of a frequency of each one of them. Similar, but never the same, as their point of attention is always different, defining point of attention as each individual consciousness observer having its own individual stream of thought patterns and perceptions, a person, a being. The interaction between individual points of attention results in a partial equalization of perception between them as they combine patterns that are harmonics of a frequency that will result in a perceived set of concentrated nodes or energy concentration points within the potential energy field that are in turn perceived by them as material objects that make up their shared outside world. Each individual consciousness observer, person or being, is both creating a personal reality and also creating a collective reality as the result of combining personal harmonics of a frequency with the ones of others, creating another harmonics of a frequency collectively, where the nodes or the points of concentrated energy creating hard matter are the result of combining personal frequency of perception with that of others. Each consciousness observer will give the field its own harmonics of a frequency that will in turn interact with the ones of others, creating a frequency soup. When the personal harmonics of a frequency combines with the ones of others, it will change its nature, harmonics, with wave interaction dynamics called destructive interference and constructive interference. When more than one consciousness observer has the same harmonics of a frequency, it will add strength to the node or concentrated point of energy common to both, constructive interference. But when their harmonics of a frequency differs, then it will lessen the energy given to the node, or totally cancel it, dissolving it. All harmonics of a frequency combine to set new nodes or concentrated points of energy that are the result of the mathematical interactions between destructive interference and constructive interference, where the amount of energy of each combines to either lessen or to augment the power given to each individual node or energy concentration point, resulting in a combined manifestation or perceived shared external world. When a person or a being, a consciousness observer, has a specific thought or thought dynamic, this is also a frequency resulting from a harmonic of a frequency dynamic process as described above. When enough attention energy is given to that specific thought process, the resulting frequency of the person will automatically match the frequency of the perceived object or situation it's thinking of. This is called the law of mirrors, and it governs this universe. Equal frequencies attract each other because they are the same ones. They are one and the same. So the thought frequency equals the thing or the situation in the individual's mind, and this equals the perceived external object and or situation, because there are no external objects or situations as such, as they are all inside the same potential energy field soup of frequency harmonics as the very same thought patterns of the individual and collective consciousness awareness individuals creating it all. Thought is the object, and thought is the situation or situations. No difference. There is no external to you world. You are who has it all in your mind. You are making it all, both collectively and individually. And you call this the law of attraction. The external world is a reflection of your inner world, and the only way to change your external world is to change your internal world first. When awareness is reduced, so is perception. This means less information and less energy is being produced and processed by the consciousness observer. This translates to less detail and less information, and this means a lower frequency realm of existence, as lower ones have less detail and a slower frequency in their harmonics. And the higher the realms or densities, more detail progressively is added to the perception of the consciousness observer, and this can be also processed exponentially faster. And so are the harmonics, as the rate is also exponentially faster. The individual cannot process more than a specific amount of data given to it by its awareness, and it can only process the data at a specific time rate directly proportional to this awareness. Awareness is the number of things, ideas, and objects a consciousness observer can process and interpret, and all are standing waves resulting from frequencies and their harmonics within a potential energy field that is called the ether, and in turn is the consciousness observer itself, collectively and as a holographic piece individual. This means that the slower a density or realm is, the less detail it contains. And as perception of the consciousness observer is reduced, so is its attention energy, and so is the perceived lapse of time it takes to transform thought into a perceived material object or situation. As the awareness of the consciousness observer grows, so will its capacity to perceive and to process more detail, resulting in a faster manifestation rate, resulting in turn in a perception experience of a higher density realm of existence. A perceived solid object is a concentration of standing waves within a field that are at a more or less fixed rate, therefore giving the consciousness observer the perception idea of a solid material thing. A situation is the combination of frequency harmonics in a dynamic process involving a specific rate of frequency within a time frame given by the observer. It is the dynamic interaction of both ideas' perception and perceived solid objects through a lap of time. A sequence of frequency harmonics interacting with each other with mathematical precision. These mathematical interactions define the wavelengths and frequencies within a realm of existence, and also define the exact frequencies within a field of energy. There is no matter as such, as it is all perceived standing waves, concentrated energy points, or nodes within a field of potential energy called ether. And as explained above, the ether is a soup of consciousness. These specific mathematical frequencies and their interactions with one another, creating a combined collective harmonics of a frequency within the ether energy field, is what we can call a location, a place, a specific interaction and placement of standing energy waves we call matter, and that we later interpret with our consciousness perception, as a corner in a city, for example, with lampposts, sidewalk, telephone booths, fire hydrants, and every other minute detail as well. Being that the vehicles and the people passing by in that specific corner are also energy patterns within the field with their own interacting harmonics of a frequency, in an everlasting and continuous interaction between them all at a specific time rate, given by and as the result of both the individual and the collective rate of awareness of each consciousness observer that inhabits such a specific realm. And these specific frequencies that are exact and never equal to others are interpreted as an exact location within space and time. The exact harmonics of a frequency of that corner location is what we can use to navigate a starship.
The location and its harmonics of a frequency can be as small as an atom, or as large as you can possibly imagine, adding complexity as it expands. So, the exact harmonics of a frequency of a planet, for example, within the soup of potential energy we call ether, and externally you call space-time continuum, is its exact location in a star map, and it is also the exact data we will enter into our ship's navigation computer to set our destination. All frequencies and all their harmonics are and can be interpreted as or with numerical values, and are mathematically observable and predictable with corresponding equations. This adds an element of predictability to the energy field, containing the manifested objects and situations. This means that as we understand the mathematically predictable interactions between these objects and situations inside a potential energy field, we can indeed predict the future. Understanding these mathematical interactions and relationships between frequencies and their harmonics will constitute a frequency map that can be a small frequency map as the energetic blueprint of a small location, or can be as big as a frequency star map to guide ships through the cosmos. A frequency map is a numerical interpretation of an interaction between waves within the potential energy field or the ether, and can be of locations, or it can be of situations as well, or combined. Essentially, this is a map of the ether, or an etheric map. Objects are connected to situations that can also be circumstances. They exist within a certain context within a field. This specific context is unique and is represented with a numerical value. It can represent a situation location in any context, past, present, or future, as they are all mathematical frequency harmonics constructs. There is no past, present, or future. There are only frequency harmonics within a field, and therefore reproducible. As described above, all that must be done is reproduce the exact same frequency harmonics of the situation to be reproduced, also called the destination, and you will be there, because that frequency does not only represent the destination, it is the destination itself, as described above. The area or location where we will arrive to, our destination, is what I will call a context, and it is the result of all the interactions of all the frequencies there, complete with all their harmonics and their relationships between them. We can now represent the whole context as a complex sequence of mathematical interactions. The more complex, the more detail. We can represent a fixed, non-animated scene with numerical frequency values set in a mathematical grid pattern that is the energetic and frequency blueprint of that scene, and a mathematically precise snapshot of that or any other given event. This as a static representation of the context, as a photograph would be. Each minute detail within the scene or photograph is represented with its corresponding mathematical frequency value as a series of numbers in a grid pattern. This would represent a 2D flat photograph scene or context. Adding more detail in the form of numerical interactions and values, we can form a complex 3D or three-dimensional scene or context. a complete, ultra-detailed representation of a complete situation, snapshot fixed in time and space. The next step is to add a sequence of these 3D ultra-detailed scene context snapshots, animated numerically and mathematically using the set interactions between them according to the harmonics of each frequency that form the details of an event and of objects, and their interactions giving them an animated sequence. This scene or context is a set point in time and space we can use as a destination, as each and every sequence of events taking place in each scene context is mathematically precise, obeying precise equations known to us. We can use this to calculate an event that has not yet come to pass. When a scene context is localized and with a small number of details in the form of frequencies and their harmonics, as well as the mathematical relationships among them, we can mathematically calculate what will happen next with a lot of precision. But as we add more data, the scene context will need progressively more and more calculating power to be able to predict an outcome as the variables also increase exponentially. This process is what we call calculations of events within a quantum field. Using this process, we can also produce complete frequency mathematical situations that can be engineered to fit in or to be spliced into a real scene context taken from the outside world. Literally splicing an object, a situation, a person, or a starship into this field. Or we can subtract one as well. The only thing we must do is make the frequencies and the dynamics of their harmonics match the new ones. We can also splice an object, a person, or a ship, or virtually anything from one real context situation into another different real context situation. In this situation, we must alter the frequencies of the first situation or object to match the receiving one or destination. In the case of inserting an object into another real context situation, the precise mathematical relationship between the harmonics of the frequencies don't need to be precisely spliced, as would be the case with inserting a situation into another. As the new object is inserted, it will automatically alter all the energetic dynamics of the whole scene. From the point of view of a bystander observing the scene, the object will simply appear out of nowhere. The reactions of the consciousness observers there are part of the frequency adjustments to the presence of a new object. All these calculations require very large amounts, in the trillions of precise mathematical operations occurring at nanosecond speed rates. Needless to say, this requires very advanced and powerful computers that no longer operate using a binary language. And in order to achieve this, they make calculations using probabilities within a quantum field, using several millions of nanoparticle accelerators inside each processor's core.